So we're just going to start, and you have a board for as much as you want.
Double down it. You guys know what I'm doing. Negotiations in the state budget. I'll give you unrestricted general government aid.
I think we're talking about baseball.
No, done it.
It really is a sport. Whenever you're ready, you can take a seat. Ready? We'll get started.
All right, good.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Gabby Gerard, and I'm a 10th grade student here at BHS, and this year I started the Political Review Club as a way to educate and inform fellow students on current events and overall what's happening. And we do this through a newsletter every month that we send out, and this is just a way to connect with people in our school while keeping them aware of current events. And we wanted to put on an event this year, and we are so happy we were able to put this together, and I want to thank our guest speakers for joining us tonight, as well as Political Review Club members for helping put this together. And I would like to start by welcoming Mary Cahill to begin, and you have the stage. I have a microphone, sorry.
I think this is good. I have to confess that I'm not sure what I should say. Okay. You've got a speech. I do. Senator. So Gabby and Carly, thank you for putting this together. I'll try to speak briefly because it might be best for us to get to some questions. So you folks know I'm your mayor, and thanks to you I get to do this job. It's pretty amazing. It's every day is different. There's lots to do. There's always lots to do. We in city government, what we really do is we provide services, right? Our city and town governments provide services, and it's right across the spectrum of what people need and expect out of their communities. It's Community services like our Senior Council on Aging and our Senior Center programs, our parks, our recreational programs, our veteran services, our libraries, our public health. We also provide public safety, police and fire and emergency medical response. We take care of our roads and here's something that you don't really get all the details necessarily unless you're in some of the meetings that I get to be in, but we have about close to 160 miles of roads in Beverly, and most of those miles of roads have under the street sewer, water, stormwater. You've got drinking water and you've got stormwater, which, excuse me, is managing all the rainwater and the runoff and all that. We've got, so that's city infrastructure, and those are running down the streets and then connecting to all the buildings. And then beyond that, there are a lot of utility infrastructure, electric lines, gas lines, internet and phone lines. It is quite interesting what is under our streets and just how complex it is to try to site, maintain, upgrade, modernize, improve, all of that. So those are some of the things that go on day in and day out in terms of what I and what all the people who work for the city along with me try to do to deliver services. Our school department obviously is a big part of what a community does. I was just at the middle school for our annual proposed school budget hearing, which was at 6 o'clock and just ended. We'll be voting on that budget potentially later this evening at the school committee of the whole meeting that I'll be leaving here to go back to. So there's a lot. I mean, we in Beverly have been really broadening the focus of what we do in recent years. About 10, 11 years ago, Beverly became a green community, which is a state designation that had us start to focus more specifically, more intentionally on cutting greenhouse gas emissions in Beverly. And it's something that we've really ratcheted up in recent years. We wrote a climate action and resilience plan over the last couple of years in partnership with our neighbors in Salem. And we as a city have made commitments through that plan for reductions by 2030 and for becoming, hopefully, as close to as is possible to net zero before 2050. What we're seeing, however, through all the data through all the data around climate is that we have to be a whole lot more aggressive than even that. And so these next handful of years are critical to our success over the longer haul. I know that my colleagues in the legislature, Senator Lovely and Representative Paracella, are working on climate issues really daily in Boston as well. So we've spent a lot of time and effort on our climate work. We are taking delivery later this year on our 3rd, 4th, and 5th electric school buses. So just a year and a half ago, we had none. We'll have 5 by late this calendar year, early next calendar year. On our path to transitioning our whole school fleet, we have about 50 vehicles in our school transportation fleet, buses, half buses, vans, and we're taking steps to try to aggressively and, as quickly as we can transition that. You'll see this year new solar arrays going up over the student parking lots here at the high school and at the middle school. Student lot here, student faculty lot, and then the lot behind the middle school. A new ground mount solar array on the hillside next door here to replace the one that was built in 1981, some solar canopies over downtown parking lots, and some rooftop arrays around town at the middle school, city hall, and the senior center. Part of our effort to host as much clean and renewable energy as we can here on our city and school properties. Another thing we spent a lot of time on, again more recently, and we're really excited about what we're about to embark on, is we've started to focus a whole lot more intentionally on diversity, equity, and inclusion in Beverly. We recently completed a year-plus racial equity audit process of our city government, really kind of shining a light on all we have done and do today and how can we do better to try to make sure that Beverly provides, that through our city government and what we do, that we do everything we can to provide that level opportunity for everybody, to chase their dreams in Beverly. So the audit final report was just delivered to us late last week. It'll go public this Friday after we have the chance to meet with all the department heads who are going to be asked to implement a lot of the action, the recommended action items that come with it. So that's a range of things. I'll stop there and let my colleagues share a few thoughts.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to go next. Joan Lovely, the State Senator for the 2nd Essex. The 2nd Essex District is currently Beverly, Danvers, Peabody, Salem, and Topsfield. Topsfield has been redistricted out of the 2nd Essex, so next year, if I have the good fortune to be able to return to the Senate in re-election, I will no longer represent Topsfield. It's gone into another Senate district. We went through redistricting this year as a result of census, the 2020 census, as required, and to make sure that each district, both House and Senate districts, have the equal amount of constituents in them, which in the Senate is about 165,000 people and about 40,000 for each House member. So I had the very good fortune of having grown up here in Beverly and spent a lot of time in this auditorium, in the concert and the band and musicals and plays, and really enjoyed my time here. And a Salem boy stole me decades ago to Salem, where we married and raised our family. But this is my hometown, where my heart is. I just want to tell you, I really enjoy people's journeys, so I want to give you a quick snapshot of my journey into public service. It was building a playground. Our kids were little. They were like 2, 4, and 6, and the playground in Salem in our neighborhood was that one hot metal slide and those 2 really old rubber swings, the same equipment my husband played on as a boy. So it was a really pretty broken down playground, and no children were going there. And so I went to the mayor in Salem and my city councilor and said, can we rebuild that playground? And they said, sure, form a little neighborhood playground committee. So we did, and some parents. And over the course of a year, we identified funding, we did the planning for the playground, and then over the course of a weekend in a fall, with 100 volunteers, we built a playground. And that was such a positive experience for me as a young parent that propelled me into some committee level things at the city level. And then I went to my husband and said, I think I want to run for city council. Now, I'll back up. My husband was a city councilor when I met him, so I knew all the phone calls and all the meetings that he was going to when we were dating, and I was in my early 20s, and I really wasn't interested in any type of civic engagement. It didn't interest me. So he said to me, don't you remember all those phone calls, all those meetings? I said, I do, and I still want to do it. And I had the very good fortune of serving on the Salem City Council for 15 years. Never thought in a lifetime that I would do that. Then that was such a positive experience for me, and learning at the local level. I will tell you, at the local level, it really is where the rubber meets the road with services to our constituents. Your streets, your sidewalks, your plowing, your trash picked up, but more importantly, your schools, your community, what does your community look like, and how is it run by your leaders, by your local leaders. So I'm so grateful that I had that experience. And then I had this incredible fortune as well to be able to run for the state senate and in my 10th year. So it's just a great. What we do at the state level is different than what we do at the city level, but I will tell you, what we do at the state level, it defines what happens at the city level, and we work very closely. We're on speed dial with each other, pretty much, and the Senate is taking up its budget. We're doing our budget amendments now. We just released our budget yesterday, $49.8 billion. So the way it works is the governor releases his budget in January. The House then releases their budget in April, and the Senate releases our budget in May. And the House and budget, and they take the governor's budget, and a conference committee will work on that for probably about 4 weeks and put together a budget that pretty much kind of incorporates most of all of that of what the priorities are. And because by law, we have to pass a balanced budget by June 30th. And we do that. Now, if we don't do that, we pass a 1/12 budget, which we did do that during COVID, because we weren't sure what our revenue picture was looking at like, because COVID had turned our worlds upside down as we knew it. So, but by law, we have to have a balanced budget, but we can do a 1/12 budget. And we actually did it that year, right up until December. 1/12 budget for July, then August, September, and in December, we passed a budget for going through to the next end of June. So in the Senate and in the House, we passed the budget, which is probably the biggest initiative that we do in our 2-year session. But we also file about 6,000 bills, Representative, in that time frame at the beginning of the session. But we also do file bills throughout. Every single one of those bills has a hearing. We have 42 joint committees, and every single bill gets referred to a joint committee, and every single one has a public hearing. Thank gosh for Zoom, because we have done most of these remotely. And what has that done? Our citizen participation is enormous now, because people can come in from their living rooms, from their workplace, whatever that might be. So our participation, and same at the local level too. I now can go to city council meetings, in my community, right from my home office. It's 7 o'clock at night. And not go to City Hall, and be able to stay attuned to what's happening at the local level. So we're very busy right now, because the House did their budget last month. Senate, we're doing our budget the week after next. Those will be marathon sessions. They're about 12-hour days that we will be in the State House, in the chamber. And we will pass what I would call a responsible budget. And we will then we will work on those, how many bills we're going to get across the finish line by August 1st, July 31st. So that's a quick snapshot, and I want to just turn it over to Representative Paracella, my partner in the State House. Rep.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, we do work really well together. I just want you to know that. It's really important to know that we all work well together. We talk to each other all the time. We want to make sure we're doing what's best for the Commonwealth and for the city. Thank you to the students for putting this together. It's so great to see you engage and involved in politics, because I think it's really important. We actually passed some legislation to essentially require civics education in school, because with everything that's going on and sort of the discourse that's happening, we thought it was really important that people learn about civics and learn about their government. So it's great that you invited us here and that you do this. So people kind of say, like, what do you do? What's the state rep? I sort of would explain to people, I'm like your congressman, but locally. I don't go to Washington, I go to Boston. We pass legislation, we pass laws, we vote on the budget. As the senator alluded to, we just passed our budget about 2 weeks ago, and just some of the, well, first of all, as I mentioned, we work really well together. There's sort of this kind of toxic atmosphere in Washington. We passed the budget. It's almost $50 billion, and it was a unanimous vote. Republicans and Democrats all working together for a common good. Some of the highlights for Beverly in the budget were like $13.1 million for our schools to support our teachers and staff here. That's almost $2.5 million more than last year, because we passed what's called the Student Opportunity Act, and we want to pour an extra couple $1 billion into our schools over the next 7 years, because we really think it's important. Probably one of the most important things we do is educate our students. It's got about $6.5 million in unrestricted local aid that can pay for police, firefighters, parks. The Senate is doing their budget, and they've actually put a lot more money into that item. So maybe Beverly will get even more. Does anybody here play pickleball? Pickleball, yeah, okay, we got a couple, all right. So I didn't really know much about pickleball, right? Last year I was invited down to Obeah Park to play some pickleball, and there's a really passionate pickleball crowd here in Beverly, but Beverly doesn't have pickleball courts, so they were except for temporary pickleball courts at Obeah Park. So I played a couple times. I thought it was great, and I talked to a lot of people who play, especially during the pandemic when you wanted to get outside, and that was sort of your recreational activity, was getting outside because of the pandemic. So after speaking with them, talking to the mayor, I got $200,000 in this year's budget so Beverly can build pickleball courts. So So it's one of those things. People play tennis, people play basketball, and people want to play pickleball. So, that's talking to the community members, talking to the mayor, talking to folks in the community, and that's what you try to do as their representative, represent them and try to see what you can do. The city is going to be doing some work on the library, HVAC, and things like that, so I got a $200,000 earmark for help the city pay for that. And you also may have heard about the situation near the Varian site where they're trying to do a cleanup of the hazardous waste site there. It's been going on for a long time. There's some frustration in the neighborhood about how that has progressed. So I got $100,000 in the budget for the city to be able to do its own sort of independent testing and analysis of what's going on there, because we heard a lot from the residents who are concerned about how this could affect them. So those are some of the things that we do. I chair the Economic Development Committee at the State House. So we have jurisdiction over a number of things in economic development. And just on Monday, we had a 6.5-hour hearing. The governor filed his economic development bill. It's about $3 billion. It's got a lot of money in there from the federal opera stimulus money and also some money that we would borrow to pay for like roads, bridges, things like that. So I chair that committee. So like I said, we had about a 6.5-hour hearing on that. So hopefully in the next month or so, I'll take those comments that we heard from over 60 people, comments from local government, comments from my colleagues, and we'll try to put out a bill that will sort of help Massachusetts come out of this pandemic. We're doing really well. It's actually, our budget is doing way better than we thought. About a year and a half, 2 years ago, during the height of the pandemic, I remember talking to the mayor and others about, you may get a 20% cut in your local aid in the schools, but now we have, about a $2 billion surplus. So the Massachusetts has really turned it around and things are going well. So that's great. And one other thing that I have jurisdiction over in the Economic Development Committee is sports betting. So I got a lot of comments about sports betting. It's all around us, and it's just there's a huge passion for sports in Massachusetts. So we estimate that 32 states have legalized it. It's not legal yet in Massachusetts. Rhode Island has it, New Hampshire has it, Connecticut has it, New York has it. So people can bet either driving up to New Hampshire or Rhode Island or going on their phone. So I'm hoping that we can get that passed by July. And I think I estimate that just in the licensing fees alone, it would be about $70 million to the Commonwealth, and then probably about $70 to $75 million that can go back to our cities and towns from the tax on bets. So those are some of the things that I work on as your state rep, and I love the job. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, everyone. My name is Carly Jones. I'm in 10th grade, and I'm the Vice President of Political Review Club. We would now like to invite the floor to ask questions to our speakers. So if anyone would like to start us off.
Like Oprah.
Yep.
Thanks. Thank you. It was great hearing from all of you. I actually have a lot of questions, but I'm going to start with one. Representative Paracella, you said something that got me excited. You were talking about you had a unanimous decision. I think it was in passing a bill or the budget, and what I liked about that is it was Republicans and Democrats, and I think today we're becoming more and more polarized. And I'd love to hear from all of you what steps you're taking to prevent that polarization between both parties and try to find some common ground.
Well, that's what I really like about at the State House is it's not like that. I mean, obviously there are times when we have differences of opinion, but it's all about like the policy. What do we think is right and what's wrong? And I think, and I don't know, like, I actually worked in Washington in the early 90s for a congressman. I was an aide, and I think back then they kind of got along a lot better, and now, for whatever reason, there's just this polarization. But for me, like, I hang out with Republicans, I hang out with Democrats, I go golfing with Republicans. I think you have to have that personal connection with each other, and that's what helps you do your job better. So we don't see that at the State House that we do in the national level, where they might not even be able to agree on what day it is. But I think that was one of the things that when I talked about passing that civics education, sort of teaching folks at the school level about our government. And if they're well informed, then I think that helps the public understand what we're doing. And so that's what we're trying to do. I just think we do really work well together. So what you kind of see on TV and what may be going on down there is not what's happening in Boston.
And I would add, it's about relationships in anything that we do, whether it's in business, certainly in the political arena. It's about having good relationships with each other. I think of Senator Kennedy, who always worked across the aisle for the benefit of the citizens of Massachusetts. And a few years ago, back in 2016, we passed the Pregnant Worker Fairness Act. That was my bill. And a Republican colleague came to me and had a concern about wanting to add something to the bill because his wife had gone through a pregnancy where they weren't sure if their baby girl was going to make it to term. And so he wanted to add something to the bill that would help pregnant women who had some type of medical issue with the pregnancy to be able to also be able to get this leave that we were looking for all pregnant women, to help pregnant women to stay in the workforce. And he thought that was missing from the bill. So I was advised by another colleague who said, he's a Republican. You don't even have to listen to him. And I went, he's a person. So I went to him and I said, let's sit down. What can I do? And we worked on that language, and I got that language included in the bill. And to this day, he and I are very close in the Senate because I gave him the time, even though it was my bill. It didn't matter that he was a Republican. He's a person, and he and his wife had a very serious issue. That baby was born perfectly normal, and she's beautiful today. She's a little toddler, but it was that was so personal to him, and that's what we're supposed to do. That's what good government is.
Yes and yes. Second all those emotions. And I'll say, I served in the legislature as Beverly State Representative, as a lot of you know, from 1993 to 2002, and had those same relationships across the aisle. And that's really a big part of what makes legislative bodies work, is people getting to know each other as people, getting to understand. We all bring kind of the sum of our life experiences to date to what we do, right? And it helps to shape the lens we look through, and it's important to get to understand other people. I will say that on a higher level, right, every 10 years after the census, state legislatures redraw district maps at the local level for city councils, at the state level for legislatures, and at the federal level for Congress. And there's been a lot of, I think, over time, a lot of damage done around the country when state legislatures are controlled by one party or another at a given point in time, and they end up drawing the district lines so as to protect that party over the other party. That's happened so much at the national level that there are very few congressional seats that either party could win in a given year. And I think that the fact that there are too few contestable districts. There are too few districts around the country where Republicans and Democrats could have a hope for winning. And what happens then if it's only a Democratic district or only a Republican district, then more collaborative thinking people and along with that more moderate viewpoints get pulled away from the center by their own party at that primary level in a given congressional district or U.S. Senate district within a state. And I think there are just right now in D.C., there are fewer people who are inclined to work across party lines. And that's going to take some time to fix. There are some pending court cases in different states that are challenging redistricting plans. And I think those are important steps if there's success in trying to bring those legislative bodies back to their undertaking and fulfilling their responsibilities the right way. Anyway, it's a big thought, and it's going to take some time. But the human factor is so important. And in Washington, getting more people to Congress who really want to work with other people for the benefit of everybody is probably the key.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming tonight. My question is, you mentioned, sir, that gambling is on the table. You also mentioned that there are 4 or 5 states that are doing very well and have allowed this. What is the holdup in Massachusetts? Why don't we just say go? Are we concerned with gambling as anonymous? Are we concerned with other aspects of just saying, hey, let's do it? And if it does pass, Mr. Mayor, would you look at probably having an off-track betting, establishment someplace where people can walk in and make a bet if that's allowed, so you don't have to go to a casino or make it over the phone, and get more revenue into this city? So I'm just wondering, why don't we just say go and do it like all the other states?
Good question. So we passed it in the House in last July, but the Senate has passed a version a couple weeks ago. So we just kind of have to work out the differences. The big difference between what we passed and what the Senate passed is we allow college betting. The Senate doesn't allow college betting. So we need to work that out. And I think I'm really hopeful that we will be able to do that. As far as like your question about sort of an off-track betting in Beverly or something like that, the way that we have it set up right now is all the casinos would get a license where you could go in person. There's still some, believe it or not, there's still some horse track licenses out there, although there's not really. Plain Ridge Park has horse racing, the harness racing, but there's a group that wants to get thoroughbred racing back to Massachusetts, and that can create some decent jobs. So we give them a license as well. So it would help not only with the horse racing, but allow them to have sports betting. And then we also have mobile applications. So that would be like a separate license so you could bet on your phone. So our proposal right now wouldn't have the city of Beverly having a retail location at this time. There is discussion about opening that up in the future. But the casinos are ready to roll. Encore already spent $400 million for a sports book. They're ready to roll. MGM in Springfield, they're ready to roll. Plain Ridge Park, they're eager to do it. So I'm hopeful it'll happen before the end of July.
Representative Parasella led that bill, so he knows it inside and out. I will tell you, the Senate, because we just took it up a couple of weeks ago, it was frustrating. I'm a supporter of the bill, that it took us that long to pass the bill on the Senate side, but we have, which is the good thing. And then Rep. Parasella will likely be on the conference committee leading on the House side to get that bill done. So thank you, Rep.
I'm laying 2-to-1 odds we're going to make it happen.
Oh, my. And as the senator said, Representative has been, hip deep in this so he's developed of necessity a real expertise in it. I think when you look at the lottery, I mean, we have really many places in every community where you can go in and play the lottery in different fashions. I think that's how it, to the extent it'll come to communities, that's how it'll probably roll out. So I don't know that individual would have a decision to make as a mayor. I'm assuming it's coming or it's not into the the off-track setting.
Yeah, so one of the reasons that we took that approach, with the casinos is they're already licensed, they're already vetted. So because if you had all these smaller establishments, the Gaming Commission has to review all of these. So we kind of wanted to get it going, and then see how it rolls out, and then perhaps allow other venues to participate in it later. There is a provision in there to allow our veterans organizations to have like 5 machines, because they're kind of hurting these days. I'm a veteran myself, and there's just not a lot of members that are joining, especially post 9/11 veterans. So this would give them a little bit of extra revenue to help out the posts. And basically the legislation says that all the revenue that they raise would go back to supporting veterans programming.
Thank you. Do you have a question? Hi, Senator Lovely. After being in city council for 15 years or so and then transitioning into the Senate, what were some of the things that you learned from being in the Senate that you didn't get the chance to learn in city council?
Okay, could you repeat that one more time? I want to make sure I got it all. Thank
Yeah,
you.
sorry. After being in city council for like 15 years or so, and then transitioning into being in the Senate, what were some of the things that you like learned from being in the Senate that you didn't get the chance to in like city council?
Thank you. I will tell you, and as I mentioned in my opening remarks, I am so grateful that I have this local experience, that I got to work with, the 2 mayors over in Salem to really understand local government and how it works. Because as I said, it really is, we're responsible in the legislature, working with the governor, to be able to bring these resources back to our communities, to make sure that sufficient education funding comes back. The mayor is the head of the school committee in most communities, I think if not all. Not here, you're not. On it, but not the head. In Salem, I think the mayor is the president. Is the president, right? So Mayor Driscoll. So I give our school committee members a tremendous amount of credit. That's a difficult job to be able to really determine how to spend those school dollars and how to really provide a really high quality education to our communities. If you have a really solid community with a really solid schools, it attracts families and people want to live in your community. I can't stress how important it is. So I did not have the opportunity to serve on a school committee, but I tell you, I wish I had, because I probably would have learned quite a bit. I did serve last session. I was a member of the Joint Committee on Education, so I got a great deep dive at that level where we're hearing all these bills. But I think serving at the local community in anything that you might do, I think, and I want to say thank you to the Political Review Club, because we met back in January in Zoom and we talked about how you get involved in your local community and maybe if you want a future in public service and how you might do that. And I had said that I think that anybody should start at the local level and really get some volunteer experience, some elected experience if that's your interest, serve on a board, a planning board, zoning board, that's really detailed experience. It doesn't get any better than that. You bring all of that up to the state level. And because we pass policy, we pass laws on how to, again, support our cities and towns with zoning, for example. We just this past session, we passed a bill so that we wouldn't have a supermajority on our city councils or our zoning boards, planning boards, when you're passing some development or types of things in your community. And there's the other piece: is community involvement. Whether you're going to be serving on a board or whether you're a citizen who is interested, again, I guess a silver lining of a pandemic is that we do all remote now, or hybrid now. Not all remote, we did all remote, and now we're hybrid. We have an opportunity to be able to engage with the public on so many more levels, and we see so much more public engagement, and where you have a say in how your government runs. That's exactly how it works. So I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
I've got a thought there, because that's a great answer, and that's a great pathway, career-wise, that you probably didn't plan. I certainly didn't plan mine. I did the opposite. I was a school teacher, and I loved it. I taught here, I taught in Ipswich. I was teaching all through my 20s, and I thought, this is my career. And then I started to get really concerned about and really passionate about environmental issues. And next thing I knew, I was running for office. Well, I looked and thought, where can I try to have an impact on these issues? And I looked right to the legislature, because we had an environmental club at our school, and the kids had done some advocacy around recycling, and nobody seemed to be listening. So I ran for office. Now, I knew what I knew, and there was lots I didn't know, right? But I got elected to the state legislature, and there I went. With some understanding of education, having taught for 10 years, and a real passion for environmental issues. After serving 10 years in the legislature and learning a boatload about how things worked, I then came back locally. I served on the city council and I ran for mayor. And I think it is to Beverly's benefit that I have such a deep understanding of how things work at the state level, and a set of relationships that go back that far and that long. in state agencies and in, the various sectors of government. So that's another way of doing it. And one thing I just want to say, because, part of this is, pathways and how do you figure out what you want to do and what are ways that one gets into impacting, our communities and our policies. When I was elected to the state legislature, I was a middle school teacher. My classmates were an auto parts store owner, a car salesman, a police detective, a nurse, a school committee member from a community that decided to run, a retired superintendent of schools, a retired high school principal, all different types of jobs and professions and perspectives. And when you are part of what's called a multiple member body, like an elected legislature, the Senate, the House, you get to meet so many fascinating people, and you get to learn, and that goes back to how do you get things done, right, and how do things work best. You really learn so much about other people and their experiences and their areas of expertise that they bring with them. So.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any other questions? I'll do your first, and then I'll do you.
No, definitely.
Okay.
See, we're already cooperating together. See that? Isn't that great?
Mayor Cahill, you were talking about the climate resilience plan. I was just wondering, what's Beverly doing to work to reduce the pollution of our harbors and beaches?
So the question is, what are we doing on the beach and coastal pollution front, right? Maybe the best answer is that we're looking carefully at our own trash and recycling policies, and we're always trying to revisit. Are we effective enough at recycling? That's one. We've done a lot of resilience work to try to make sure that our beaches and parks are not harmed by storm surge flooding. And I think, on the keeping things out of the trash that can be recycled, making sure trash gets where it's supposed to get to, and then periodic cleanup events. And I think maybe I'd just ask you, not here on the spot, but after we're done talking, if you have some thoughts or you want to talk, if anybody wants to talk with us off of this setting, out of this setting, we've got a sustainability director who works with me daily, and we have a volunteer waste reduction committee of residents that could help kind of talk through those issues and try to do a better job of minimizing trash that gets on the beach and in the water, because that is a problem. It's a problem in every coastal community in the world, really. It's a great question. Thanks.
And if I could add in, this is what we do at the state level to support the cities, is we provide grant opportunities for climate preparedness. So and through our Clean Water Trust, we have allocated hundreds of millions of dollars for municipal vulnerability preparedness program. Those are grants as well again, just to be able to allow these opportunities so that these grants can come in to be able to clean up the beaches and the parks and provide that, especially with climate change and with rising sea levels. We can't do enough. So we continue to be able to bring those grant opportunities in.
Not so much specifically about cleaning up the beach, but just sort of the general climate issues that were being discussed. We recently passed a pretty big bill in the House. It was over about $150 million to promote wind energy. Someone said that we could be the Sahara Desert of wind, the Sahara Desert with all the oil, with our offshore wind. And Salem is looking to be a port that would have a lot of facilities there, that putting together the wind turbines and things like that, and then providing offshore wind. Block Island had some of the highest energy costs in the country. They had this old diesel power plant, and they've got 7 wind turbines off of Block Island now, and it's working really well. So that's something that we're looking to do here in Massachusetts, to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels every time I pull up at the gas station now, I'm like, oh my God. So whatever we can do to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels, I think is really important. And we've also put a lot of money in research into battery storage, because I think that's key. If it's not sunny and the wind isn't blowing, what do we do? So if we can store that energy and be able to store it and then have it come out when it's in nighttime and the wind's not blowing, things like that, that's really important. So there's a big program at UMass that's looking at that as well.
Thank you. I know a lot of our members here are part of Green Club, so that's some really great information to have. Did you have a question?
Hi, this is a question I think for all of you, because you've all had experience at the state level. I think one of you mentioned that there was something like 6,000 bills that come before the Senate and the House, and so I'm guessing that not all 6,000 pass, and so that made me start to think of. I think I'd be interested to hear maybe the story about a bill that was close to your heart that you sponsored, and maybe how it became successful and got passed, and kind of what it takes.
I'd be happy to start. So 6,000 bills get filed, and about 10% pass. So about 600 pass. And a lot of times a bill will be filed, and it may not be ready for what I call prime time, to be able to get to the governor's desk. I have filed bills in the past that have changed as they work their way through the process. So each one of those bills gets heard. We take testimony. But also, each one of those bills also has to be reviewed by the appropriate agency that would be overseeing that. So if it's an education bill, Department of Education is going to take a look and weigh in on that. I recently did a bill, an adoption bill. It took a couple of terms to get through, so about 4 years. That's actually not bad. Sometimes a bill could take 10 years. So it's refiled every time. So those 6,000 bills, many of those are refiled bills that the senator or rep was not able to get over the finish line the last session, but so they refile it and continue to work on it. And this adoption bill that we just did is actually, it actually got some what I call prime time again because of COVID. And what this adoption bill does, and we were able to get it passed, was it opened up the opportunity for siblings to adopt younger siblings. We saw COVID take families apart. Parents passed away, left children, and loved ones want to stay with loved ones. So we were able to, and there was not that ability for a sibling to adopt a sibling. And we made that happen. So, it's COVID that really put that bill over the finish line because of necessity. If not, who knows if I would have that bill done and then refile it. So next year, but we were able to get it done. So I have some other bills that I've been working on. One of my primary bills and topics that I work on in the Senate is child sexual abuse prevention. And I've been working on a particular bill for about 8 years, it's ready. It's ready to make it to the floor, and it took that long because again, it's an education. It's in the education committee because it has an education piece to it, and it took that long because we needed to educate and to just work on the bill. We changed it. We made it better. But a bill, for example, like that, or other bills, can take some time to be ready to go to the floor. And I'll turn it over to the rep. Go ahead, Rep.
Well, let me jump in because I have to go back to my school committee meeting in a couple minutes, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Gabby and Carly. Gabby and Carly, thank you so much. This is fantastic. Oftentimes, the most important, the most needed pieces of legislation take the longest, and for various reasons. during my time in the legislature, I was the lead sponsor of the workplace smoking ban bill in my last term in the House. I knew it was my last term. I wasn't running for re-election to the House. And the people who were supportive of that workplace smoking ban, so people wouldn't have to breathe in secondhand smoke in the workplace, they said, oh, we're not ready. And I said, you have to be ready because this isn't going to pass right away. You have to get it up on the table. You have to force people to think about it and talk about it. And the people who are opposing it, you have to hear why they oppose it. You have to start working through those issues. And so it was a great process, even though we all felt pretty confident it would take longer than 2 years. Well, 2 years after I left the legislature, they passed it. And so I felt really good about the work we did over my final 2 years that helped set the table for the next session. And another piece of legislation I was a part of was special education reform. It was a hot topic all through the 1990s. In 1995, I was named to the governor's special commission on education reform, on special education reform. That process was a couple of years, and then the Speaker of the House put together a House working group, and I was one of the co-chairs of that. So for about 5+ years, I worked very closely with many people from agencies and communities and interest groups, and I was a part of, I didn't drive every piece of it, but we each had our piece, and I was a part of moving some important parts of that, and it ended up passing in the year 2000. And it's a lot of what we rely on for strong special education services in the state are part of that reform. So those are just examples. They're big issues. They don't happen easily, and there's a lot of complexity. And I think that's part of why you see so few bills passing in any given session. So again, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Thank you.
Representative?
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good luck.
Walk quietly and listen.
All righty.
Listen to you.
I would say one of the bills that I'm probably most proud of was a pretty comprehensive veterans bill that we did a few years ago when I was chairing the Veterans Committee. Massachusetts, I think, does more for veterans than any other state. And so what this bill did was we were hearing from veterans coming back about frankly, they were facing some discrimination about their status as a veteran. Did they have PTSD? Were they messed up? Things like that. So we made veteran status a protected class, just like race, gender, religion. So now in Massachusetts, you can't be discriminated against because of your veteran status. We give veterans preference in public housing. So if all things are equal, then a veteran would get preference. And that was actually approached to me by Brad Hill, at the time was the state rep from Ipswich and a Republican. So as you mentioned, how do we work together? He's a Republican, I'm a Democrat. And I said, Brad, that's a great idea. Let's do this. And so we codified that into law. Every veteran that deploys from Massachusetts, let's say you go to Iraq or Afghanistan, when you come back, you get a $1,000 welcome home bonus. No other state does that. Every city and town in Massachusetts is required to have a veterans agent. So what that means is all our veterans have a point of contact locally that they can go to for veteran benefits. We have David Parent-Chief in Beverly, retired Marine, does a great job. So I've done a lot of traveling with veterans. I'm on a National Veterans Committee, and I go to other states, and I remember talking to somebody from Nevada. Clark County is Las Vegas, and they got a population of about 1 million people, actually probably more than that now. And they have one veteran agent for 1 million people. Here in Beverly, we have a veteran agent, for the citizens of Beverly. We just do way more for veterans than any other state. So that legislation was something that I was really proud of.
Thank you. And thank you for all of these wonderful questions. And we understand the time constraints some may be on. So we'd like to thank our speakers again for joining us tonight, and thank you for coming for our first Civics Conversations event. If you'd like to join our newsletter, we do have a sign-up sheet outside, and you can keep in touch. We're on Instagram at bhs.politicalreview, and we have our interviews with Senator Lovely, as well as some other interviews and our newsletter. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a great evening.
Thank you. job. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. That's great. I gotta go.
You guys did awesome. I said I was going to shut off the lights. I didn't want like a hot light situation. And here, it is still live. So it's still live? Oh, okay.
I was taught at Emerson College, treat every mic like it's live.
That's right.
Good advice. This is wonderful, beautifully set up, really just really nicely run.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Great job.
Thank you. And are you running for you're running for re-election? Ooh, I'm past the fly.
Audio's good now. There's no mics that are on. Oh.